All right. Ready? All right, I'd like to call the Pump Storage Advisory Committee meeting to order. If we could start with a moment of reflection. Thank you. Is there any pecuniary interest that needs to be declared? Don't believe so. Good. So we move on to section 3 of the agenda, which is public participation. And I'll read this as I do each meeting, but members of the public are encouraged to provide the committee with their comments and questions. Presentations must be pre-arranged with Kirsten Higginson, project coordinator. Check that, project administrator, pump storage project before the agenda is released. Members of the public who wish to make a deputation about a specific agenda item at the meeting must register in advance with Kirsten Higginson by 4 p.m. on the day before the meeting, and then contacts. I don't believe there are any presentations, but I believe we do have a deputation. If you're ready.
There we go. Thank you. Thanks very much for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Kelly Haslam. For transparency, I'm Doug Haslam's wife, and I'm a director of Save Georgian Bay. But I'm here today speaking to you as a private citizen, as opposed to as a director of Save Georgian Bay. I signed up to do a deputation for you in response to the presentation that you received last week. Like I was waiting with bated breath for an update on the project. Watched online, assuming that the presentation would provide you with some information about the project beyond the marketing material that's been put out so far. And unfortunately, I was disappointed. I was also disappointed to see that there was a lot of information that I felt was missing from the presentation that I thought may be relevant to you. So I wanted to take a moment and speak to specific slides in the presentation and pieces of information that you may want to consider along with the information that was provided on the slides. So starting with the slide, that is slide 3 in the presentation. Clark pointed out that the proposed project will provide enough energy to power 1 million homes for up to 11 hours. Providing energy is kind of a loose concept, and I wanted to make it really clear that this is not an energy generation project. The Ontario Pump Storage Project is an energy storage project. It doesn't generate any energy. It takes energy off of the grid, stores it, and then puts 70% of that energy back onto the grid when it's needed. The 30% differential is what's used in the process. So it's only 70% efficient. So it returns enough energy. If it returns enough energy to power 1 million homes, it uses the energy to power $1.3 million homes to operate. So it's wasting the energy to power 300,000 homes. So I just want to make sure that was clear, that it's an energy storage project. Slide 4 of the presentation says, why Meaford? And tries to make the case for why Meaford would be an ideal location for the project. I have heard them say that the over 43,000 people that signed the petition against the project simply don't want it in their backyard. But the reality is we don't think it should be in anyone's backyard. The open-looped project requires a large piece of land in order to develop a project like that. And it needs to be adjacent to an open body of water, and it requires long transmission lines to connect it to the grid from here. So in contrast, doing long duration battery parks take up a smaller footprint. They can be built where the storage is needed and close to the demand for the energy. So for example, like we could put battery projects right on the Bruce Power property. So we wouldn't need to use farmland, we wouldn't need to use the base, we wouldn't need to use the waters of Georgian Bay. On slide 6 of the presentation, it says that this project is a climate change solution. The reality is that all energy storage projects are climate change solutions. This one is not unique. Any energy storage project is going to help Ontario to green the grid. The difference is this one's going to take a really long time to start helping. We have a need to store energy right now. We have a differential between high and low demands, high demand for energy during the day, low demand for energy at night. That demand is going to steadily reduce over time, as predicted by the IESO. They believe that due to electric vehicles, heat pumps, and battery storage projects that they've already approved, that this differential of demand is going to decrease over time. So we need energy storage now, not in 2032 or 2035 when this project would potentially come online. Slide 7 of the presentation says that this proposed project represents Indigenous reconciliation. I agree. But it's important to recognize that any energy projects can include Indigenous participation. And in fact, many of the battery storage projects that have been recently approved by the IESO feature 50% or more Indigenous ownership. Slide 8 is the slide that contains a graphic of the economic report that Clark referred to as witchcraft. I tend to agree. The project TC Energy commissioned this report from CanSIA. CanSIA, if you look at their website, lists as one of the services that they provide is creating influence via their specialized reports. So TC Energy commissioned this project from them. And of course, it's being used to influence governments, Grey County, municipality of Meaford, into providing support for the project. This particular slide said that the project was going to contribute $6.8 billion to our economy. But what it didn't say is that it's going to cost us, taxpayers, $7 billion to build. So who cares if it's going to contribute 6.8 billion to the economy if it's going to cost $7 billion to build? It's just like robbing Peter to pay Paul. The jobs number, 41,200 that you were provided, is particularly misleading. You need to understand that those jobs are from direct sources, indirect sources, and induced sources. And they're also calculated in the fine print as people years. So what that means is, let's say there is one additional job at Tim Hortons for 5 years. One person hired that's going to work there for 5 years. That job is counted as 5 in people years. So just make sure that you understand what those numbers mean. Take a look at the fine print. Some information was provided to you in the form of graphics about what the project is going to look like. This one says a collaborative process, that the design is collaborative. But you heard at the presentation that TC Energy will not share any of the specific details of the design. I hardly call that collaborative. And they've called their design best in class. It's important to know that TC Energy is in the pipeline business. They've never built a pump storage project. And open looped pump storage is so problematic, technically, environmentally, and economically, that there's not been a new one built in North America since Ludington in the early 1970s. Closed loop, pumped hydro storage projects recirculate the same water between the upper and lower reservoir and are generally considered to be much less environmentally damaging and less expensive than open loop projects. Those are more common. They also included a slide that said that there is community and Indigenous engagement, and that resolutions of conditional support were received from Meaford, Grey County, and Owen Sound. It's true. What they didn't tell you is that 4 municipalities have passed resolutions against the project, and that 43,000 people have signed petitions opposing the project. We also have support against the project, support for Save Georgian Bay from the Georgian Bay Association, the Ontario Clean Air Alliance, and the Escarpment Corridor Alliance, all very active environmental organizations in this region, all oppose the project. And finally, it was mentioned in the presentation that battery storage is not a viable alternative because it's not long duration, it's not environmentally friendly, and that there are disposal and fire concerns. I'd like to point out that some of those concerns are related to lithium-ion batteries, not redox flow batteries or any of the other new battery technologies that are coming online that are proposed by opponents of this project. TC Energy's own Saddlebrook Solar and Storage project is employing Lockheed Martin's GridStar Flow energy storage technology, which is described by Lockheed Martin as an innovative battery solution designed for long duration, large capacity energy storage applications. If it's good enough for Alberta, I don't know why it's not good enough for Ontario. I'd like to suggest that maybe we look into alternatives like that that would be more cost effective and less damaging to the environment. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no other deputations? Okay. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on to part 4, which is approval of the minutes of the last meeting. I think everyone's received them. I need a motion approval. Bob and Martin, second. Thank you. And now, that's a good point. All in favor? You can. Items for consideration. So one of the things that we want to do is have a discuss that, so allow the committee time to discuss the presentation that that we received at the last meeting. This is an opportunity by putting it on the agenda is an opportunity for the public to come in and comment, which is what we want to do because we're trying to gather engagement. But also it's an opportunity for the committee to discuss if they thought through the presentation anymore, if there's any points that wanted to be raised afterward. Are there any thoughts on the presentation that was done? Harley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having a bit of a problem with one slide. I think it's slide number, well, we can look at either number 3 or 4, which shows the mapping of the project area. And then, but on the 4th page, it mentions the project footprint is going to involve less than 500 acres. I think that number, to me, by looking at the mapping, if you consider the reservoir at 370, I think that the number 500 seems to be low. I'm thinking something maybe twice the size of the reservoir. Now, I'm not sure if just what exactly TC means by footprint, is, but it seems to me there will be more than 370 acres needed to construct, and then in the future maintain, this. The other, question I have, and I had it a minute ago, it talks about the environmental assessments. And I think it believes there will, it states there will be, the provincial assessment and the federal assessment. I understand there's also an SON environmental assessment. And now am I incorrect on that? Or it seems to me I have heard that mentioned.
I believe
few
SON
times.
has said they're doing their own independent environmental assessment, but I don't know that we know what's involved in that.
Okay, but yeah, I am correct in saying there will be more official assessments than only the provincial and the federal. The SON are doing one.
I don't know for certain, but my assumption is that SON would be doing an environmental
I have
assessment.
heard or read some things that they were doing their own environmental assessment.
Of course, though, Harley, I would say one of the concerns may be that if it's not public, they're doing their assessment and it's theirs, right? They don't need to share it. So therefore it's hard to challenge if there's something, if you'd wanted to challenge it. So it's,
But that raises the question, the conditional, right, the recommendation council passed 1.5 years ago, giving conditional, consent referred to all environmental assessments. To me, that's on or anybody else's, with official status, of course, should be a factor. Anyway, that's, those are the only 2 comments I was wondering. Thanks, Mr.
thank
Chair.
you. Shirley?
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. One question I have perhaps for yourself or for Kirsten, just a little bit about process for this discussion. Are you kind of parking questions that come forward tonight so that they can be referenced at a later date for responses from TC Energy? We're going to have this discussion, which is wonderful, but I'm just kind of wondering what the process is in terms of where those questions will land.
So we do have the areas of interest document that is intended to be like added to throughout time. So with each committee meeting, if there's any points that are brought up, we can add that on and update it as we go. We also have later on in the agenda, the items for information, the TCE correspondence process, where we will be able to share with the committee the process that we have to ensure that all of the information exchanged between members of the committee and TCE is shared with everyone. Does that help answer your question, or did I miss the parking lot?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I just wanted to make sure that committee was aware that this discussion isn't lost, that it is being captured, and that we will come back to those questions, and they are recorded, and there will be responses at some point.
Yeah, we are tracking, again, the areas of interest and points that are brought up and any communication through the committee to TCE.
In that case, Mr. Chair, could I suggest that we make sure that Harley's question is captured, that will the municipality have access to the assessments from SON so that we can have those evaluated by our third-party reviewer in the same way that we would those from TC, or at least we could have access to them for information.
I can make a note to look into that.
And there was also the question of the actual size of the, forget, is it 500 acres or more is, I guess, the question that Hartley had. Capture that as well. Okay. Are there any other, yep, Bob?
So I'll build on that comment about the footprint. What I'm looking at is, construction access. And, you're not going to have all the construction workers come through the front gate. Presumably there'd be a new security perimeter that excludes the pond and the construction access so that all those workers are technically on the outside of the security perimeter. I'd really like to know the size of that anticipated area and even the routing of maybe an access route or, however they reconfigure so that the trucks and the workers can find their way to their work site each day.
Okay, so we'll capture that. Any more thoughts? If I could, I certainly appreciated TC coming in and presenting to us. I think everyone on the committee is looking for as much information as possible, and I get it. Not all that information is available to us yet. We wanted to make sure TC understood that we're eager for that information. We want to start consuming materials, and so we look forward to the engagement. And later on in the agenda, we're going through a process discussion so that this committee, as we have questions, we can formalize how to get those questions to TCE. They're shared amongst the committee, and then we can get results from TCE, just trying to make it a little more linear. All right. Well, with that, then we'll move on to the public engagement discussion. Just as a reminder, one of the things that Adam Vaughn had raised, I think, was that wanted to get sort of a calendar of events that are happening in the municipality, and then see if there was an opportunity for the committee to be present there to get engagement from the community. So what we're hoping to do here is take a look at what some of those events are and if there's an opportunity for us to go. I do know that Adam approached the Apple Harvest Craft Show, which is happening in just a couple of weeks, and they were not open to us having a table there. I think it's twofold. This committee, whether we like it or not, it's deemed political. And so they're not sure that they wanted that at the event. But I think more importantly to it is we were late asking for space. So we want to try to get ahead of that and do that. I will be honest, I do not exactly know how that engagement happens. If we're just sitting at a table, dressed like civilians, how people know that who we are and what we're trying to do. I don't exactly know how that's going to work. So that's one of the items that we'll need to figure out. But do we have a list of the public events? We don't. All right. Great.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I was just going to ask Bob a question, wondering if the chamber has a calendar at this point that's relatively inclusive of all the events?
So the chamber just completed its AGM. There may have been a small opportunity, but it's a small audience for an AGM. Of course, they're all riveted by the material. We have dragons coming up at Meaford Hall. That's our next major event. Again, it's not necessarily lending itself to public engagement. You've got the stage, you got dragons, you got contestants. You could put something down in the galleries and maybe reach into that community. If that was a thought, certainly the chamber could, welcome that discussion. And our next major event then will be an AGM in February. So there's not much in between. However, we do have our after five events. And after five events allow businesses to network. We've been trying co-hosting this year, so I know we have one at the hall, usually with the Meaford Culture Foundation. So again, there's another opportunity to put a table. Is a table at the galleries maybe a good first step? We could certainly welcome that. And if I put on my chamber hat specifically, I think the Chamber of Commerce and the businesses it represents are interested in this project because of the economic impact it could make. And we trust that the process will protect the town from the bad things, but from an economic driver point of view, of course, we're interested. So, if you wanted to piggyback a few of our events, namely the after fives, it's actually not a bad way to do it. It's not thousands of people, it's dozens. But it might give you a taste of what's to come and how to make it better. You would need signage. You should probably have like a banner or something, something from the municipality, something that represents pump storage. And you would need perhaps handouts or contact type information to hand out. So you'd have to prepare for it a little bit.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's anyone at the municipality that can help us, like on staff, that may have experience in how we do this public engagement, because I am a little worried that we're gonna sit at a table ready to be spoken to. We're not really providing a lot of information. We're more supposed to be receiving. I don't exactly know how that'll work.
Kirsten will fight over the microphone. Do you want to go first?
I'll just say this type of public engagement that we're talking about, going to different events, hasn't necessarily been done by any of the other committees in the past. So this would be something new. And then when we're talking about official banners, pamphlets, any kind of budget, that type of decision would have to go to council for review or a resolution first, before the committee took any action on it. Just to keep that in mind, coming with the outcomes coming out of this discussion, is that it is something we're talking about, some public engagement that is slightly different than what has happened with the other committees.
Sure.
Mr. Chair, thank you. And I have a few thoughts. First of all, we have the farmer's market. It's only going until Thanksgiving, but there's a couple of weeks left. If we might consider asking them if we could get a table there. But I wonder, as I think about this, if we're a little bit cart before the horse, if we really should have our public engagement plan in place, so to speak. Thinking of, reaching out to the impact assessment people once we know if the project is going forward or not. I'm wondering if we should wait until we know if there is a project or not, because if the province doesn't give the IA process a green light, then, we won't be worrying about this. So I'm wondering if we need to know that before we get really concerned about setting up tables places. And I don't want to put Holly Maroney on the spot, but I know she's here, and Holly is our communications person. And I'm just wondering, Holly, if I might be able, through the chair and through Kirsten, to call on you if you have any thoughts on this discussion. But I just have those couple of reservations.
Through the chair, thank you, Shirley. I would agree to your first point that getting that critical milestone for this project before moving forward with not only the investments, but everyone's time with regards to the project. On to the second point of really mapping this out strategically, I would agree. Before you start to do these engagements, it's what do we want to try to understand from our audience? What are their concerns? So I would agree with you wouldn't want to just go out and say, hey, we're PSAC, we're here to engage with you all. I think you really need to critically look at what you want to get out of those engagements and then work backwards. And as you're starting to craft that plan, I think a lot of the opportunities will start to come really organically from that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. So what I'm hearing is that we're a little premature in trying to find events to go to, and maybe for our next meeting is we should work at what would we do at those events to get the information we want, or if we are sharing some information, sharing the information we want. Is that something that Kirsten, you think, now that I've met Holly, that you guys would be able to work towards for the next meeting?
Sorry, can you repeat that for me
Just
again?
like that plan, like what Holly just talked to, of what is it that we want out of the meetings or out of the public engagement, and therefore how would we do it? Is it setting up a table? Is it
So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you want out of the public engagement would be something that the committee like decides and discusses. And then we could help facilitate what comes of that and what steps need to be taken, whether it goes to council or any of that, but Holly, feel free to add, but that's what I would see coming from this.
Right through the chair. So I think I'd have to refresh myself on the process and how to best go about that. But I'd agree that that's something the committee should have an open discussion about. And I could make myself available as staff to be a part of that discussion with the committee.
okay? Well then let's do that at the next meeting. There, all right. Knew we'd get somewhere with an action plan. Okay, so is there any more comment on the public engagement discussion? Lindy?
This is possibly a little bit early for this, but if we want to consider it for the next meeting, I know I was at the fall fair in Thornbury this weekend, and the town had a booth set up where they had people there talking, but it was also very like they had a board set out and they had these stickers, and you could place a sticker in like an opinion you agreed with or where you wanted funding to go. And I thought maybe that would be a good idea for public engagement because it encourages people to come up first off because they don't need to talk to anybody. They can just come up, place their opinion and leave. And that could be a way to get more engagement from people who maybe don't want to talk to us. Maybe they just kind of want to put that idea on paper. I don't know if the information would be that valuable, but it could be a way to like start a conversation.
Great. All right, so we're going to move on to item 6, which is items for information, and we have a process to review, which is the TCE correspondent process. Kirsten, do you want to take us through that?
So at the last committee meeting, with the TCE presentation, committee members were encouraged to email energy_storage@tcenergy.com with questions for a response. We are working to make this process as fair and following the committee guidelines as we can. So the same instruction or same guidelines still apply. If committee members have specific questions, you can email this email address that was provided in their presentation. However, TCE will only provide a response to the sender of the email so that we are not advancing the work of the committee outside of the committee meeting, and or provide information to a select group of the committee if any members may have been CC'd. When TCE replies, they'll CC pumpstorage@meaford.ca for the purpose of inclusion in the following month's PSAC agenda correspondence. So in the following month, if there has been any exchange with answers from TCE to committee members, everyone on the committee will have access to review that information. In regards to timelines, like I said, the information, once provided a response from TCE, will be included on the following month's agenda. And they've shared that they intend to provide replies to questions in a timely manner, as best as they can, but depending on different factors like the length of questions, complexity, et cetera, the response time may vary. Also keeping in mind that our agenda is published a week in advance of each committee meeting. So any kind of correspondence that comes in between, for example, last week and today, would not be included in today's meeting. It would be included in the October meeting. So that's how we're doing our best to ensure that the committee has equal access to all of the information.
Yeah, and the key in this is making sure that we all get the information at the same, or get the same level of information, which
Exactly.
is the challenge that we've had. Yeah. Sure.
If I may, Mr. Chair, just in terms of this community benefit report, I think the question is, this goes back to July 2022. So is this still relevant? Does this need to be reviewed? Or are we content with the language in this note? Well, to whoever wants to respond, or perhaps it's just an open question.
So this report was referenced in TC's presentation, so we felt like it was important that the committee received that context to what was being discussed. Keeping in mind, again, as Shirley mentioned, it is 2 years old, so it is more to provide context. Any future reports with current updates from the municipality on the pump storage project would definitely be shared with the committee and included in a committee agenda. In terms of speaking to specific things, I wouldn't be able to speak right now and take apart that report, but yeah, just for context, we felt it important to be included on the agenda.
And maybe if I could, I'll just give a sort of a brief synopsis. I trust that everyone's read it, but for those that didn't, this is back in July of 2022. The crux is there's a yearly payment that's been offered in the area of 1.5 million, which is similar to the property tax that would have otherwise been collected. That wouldn't start until back in 2022. The position was it wouldn't start until the facility is operating, so 2032, before you start getting that $1.5 million. One of the things that was mentioned fairly predominantly was the development of a traffic management and post-construction remediation plan. I know that's been one of the questions about what that traffic flow looks like. I think that's not due until one of the assessments. It's part of one of the assessments that happens, as I understand it. I think that sort of summarize that there is a lot of, not a lot of information in it, but the discussion that went through this certainly talks about the beginning of this project in terms of the interaction between the municipality and TCE. It's a good level set for this committee to understand where they were 2 years ago. We probably at some point would like an update if there's been other activity with the municipality and TCE, related to this. I think there hasn't been much as we're going through the process.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I think one of my concerns with this resolution as it sits from 2022, the final paragraph, therefore be it resolved, the Council of the Municipality of Meaford hereby directs staff to bring back a report that outlines possible community benefits that can be achieved should the project proceed, including negotiations of a possible community benefits agreement for consideration by council. So again, making an assumption for now that the project is going forward, then I think, we want to follow up on that paragraph and make sure that we are actively seeking a report that's current to this point in time that would begin a discussion on those benefits more specifically.
And I think there was also an idea of in how to address the benefits is talking about what are the big ones that the municipality wants rather than peppering TCE with a whole bunch of small requests. It's let's go out and talk about the big ones first. And the Economic Development Advisory Committee is one that I need to get a little more familiar with because I think there's a lot of process that they're going through that are relevant for this project. Sure.
Sorry to hog the microphone, Mr. Chair. I think many of our committees, should have input into that discussion. I mean, infrastructure for one for sure, sustainability, accessibility. This benefits negotiation agreement will have impact potentially on almost all of our committees.
Any comment from the rest of the committee on this? Nope. Okay, so we'll move on to the areas of interest summary. This is the compilation of the July meeting work that we did, where we outlined all of the sort of a brain dump of all of the information that we thought we'd want or questions that we had. I think the idea with this document is that we keep it current and add questions to it. So it will be a live document that we'll continue to revisit. I hope everyone read through it. Are there any questions about what, or most importantly, was there anything missed? I think that's my primary concern, but are there any comments or questions about it? I know it was a ton of work pulling it together from the recording. No? Yeah. Okay, so we'll continue to, I think, to make this an automatic addition to, we'll just send it out every meeting so that we've always got the current list in front of us. I think will be helpful. We'll continue to do that. Committee inquiries. Are there any? Sure.
Mr. Chair, just because we've got a little bit of time on our side, I just wonder, Kirsten, if I could ask for sort of an outline of upcoming meetings and speakers, in order perhaps of who you intend to bring before us in the upcoming meetings.
So we don't have a finalized schedule going forward. It was kind of based on the agendas that had happened. With this meeting in particular, we wanted to give the committee space to discuss the August meeting. So we didn't have a presenter here today. As I think we touched on in the June meeting, I think was a tentative schedule for the rest of the year. So we do plan on taking the committee's feedback and inviting Save Georgian Bay to present, as that was something that the committee indicated that was an expert speaker that they wanted to, or a guest speaker, sorry for the correction, an invited guest speaker that they wanted to hear from. So in summary, hope to have Save Georgian Bay come soon.
And through you, Mr. Chair, that sounds great, Kirsten. And I wonder if I could also suggest someone from ISO, Carla or Chuck Farmer, and perhaps someone from the impact assessment process. And I'd also suggest someone from the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Cities Initiative.
Anything else that committee would like to inquire? Nope. Okay, so we're going to move on to communications. The committee will consider correspondence received by members of the public during each meeting. To be considered, need to To be considered for the following meeting, correspondence must be received by 4 p.m. the day prior to the agenda meeting being published. For the next meeting, that's Wednesday, October 2nd. Share your comments, thoughts, or concerns with the member of the committee. The public can send the email to Kirsten K. Higginson at meaford.ca. Emails are received at this address. They'll be compiled into correspondence list, which is then distributed to the committee. Before each meeting, the cover sheet includes, will be included in the agenda. And we have received some correspondence. As chair, I think I did a less than perfect job at the last meeting of covering the correspondence. So I'm going to do a better job this time, which is acknowledging the correspondence we got as first step. So I want to thank Dave McDougall, sent us a letter, which is really a comparison of battery technology versus pump storage solutions. David Fraser sent us a document reminding us and sharing articles about TCE's ground games, tactics, and previous finds. And then Kelly Haslam sent us a letter, was just following up to questions that had been raised at the July 8th council meeting concerning TCE and other unanswered questions. Does anyone on the committee have any questions they want or discussion that they want to have about this correspondence that they received? Nope. Because I didn't do it at the last meeting, I'm going to do it at this meeting. So at the last meeting, we received correspondence as well. Ginny Ellis, who's a member of the PSAC committee, actually forwarded a letter from Richard Elsky outlining many risks of the project. Mike Ashmore sent in 3 things. One was providing some rationale for why there should be a referendum. He also included a letter to the Meaford Independent about unanswered questions, and then shared a comparison chart of battery versus pump storage. Interestingly, there was a comparison of battery versus pump storage that we got via Mike Ashmore. And then there was a different one that Dave McDougall did. You can tell they come from slightly different perspectives, which is something that we as a committee will need to look at and say, well, where's the information not the same? And then figure out what we think should be the same. Anyway, hopefully, does anyone want to discuss any of the correspondence that we received at the last meeting? You probably don't. Yeah, sure. Bob.
I'll throw out this thought, which is simply that we're bound on one side, the TC side, by their schedule. And so the information we get will be perhaps the protest side of the argument, and that's not quite fair, but the people that are not bound by the schedule and ministry approvals and all that can speak now. And it'll be hard to remember some of that later on. So that's where this parking lot idea is really good, because you won't lose one half of the argument as you move into another stage. But as TC goes to approval processes and schedules, then I expect that details will come forth that can't come forth today. So that's part of this process for me, is that I have to be patient when, that's not necessarily my favorite thing to do. But we can't gather all the information at the moment. And there's an expenditure involved with the environmental studies and this engineering reports, all the other that, it's phased. Those spends won't ever happen if ministry approval doesn't happen. And so this is an odd, drawn out process. And, I'm I'm glad these meetings are televised, that people can actually see them, understand them, think about things, gather information, send us correspondence. But the hardest piece is going to have balance over a long period of time. And that parking lot idea is really, really important to that no part of the discussion gets forgotten, that everything needs to be maybe revisited from time to time to say, have we adequately asked these questions in the subject matter?
Right.
So, I find it's really an exercise in patience to wait for the process. So to whatever degree we can have the schedule in front of us, updated regularly, to say, this is expected on or about, the end of November. This is expected on or about January. Then we can gradually move through the stages and then start to get more pointed in certain questions that can't be answered today.
Right.
And for the public that's watching this, I think that bears, some thought as well, because they can develop their questions, they can develop their examples and evidence. But I think we're pretty sincere in trying to get everything onto the table that we can, and then address it as we can.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right. Public question period. We got 15 minutes for public questions, and we have a massive public here today. I don't think we have any public questions. We're ripping through our meeting. Are you anyone sure that they want to go backwards and open up a topic? I am happy to do so. No? Okay. Before we move on to the next meeting, so agenda setting meeting, the next one is September 25th. I cannot be present at that. I know the vice chair cannot be present at that. So looking for some members of the committee that are available on September 25th at 10:30 in the morning, I think. Shirley can be there. Any other committee members that have availability then? There we go. All right. No, he can't be, he's away. Yeah. Can we ask the committee members that aren't here today? There's 4 of them. They may be able, and can we see if one of them can join Martin? Yeah. Let's do that. Okay. The date of the next meeting is Thursday, October 24th. With that, I'll call this meeting adjourned.